I never thought I'd be the type of person to question everything I believed about my family until I discovered what was hiding in plain sight. My name is Jessica, I'm 28 years old, and for 3 years I faithfully handed over $800 every month to live in my childhood bedroom, while my sister Emma lived completely rent-free in the basement apartment my parents had renovated just for her. What I uncovered changed everything I thought I knew about the people who raised me, and I'm sharing this story because I know I'm not alone in experiencing this kind of systematic family manipulation. The differential treatment started subtly when Emma and I were teenagers, but it became impossible to ignore after our grandmother passed away 2 years ago. That's when I moved back home to help my parents navigate their grief while finishing my master's degree in social work. At 26, moving back in with your parents feels vulnerable enough without paying what amounts to market rent for a bedroom that hasn't been updated since high school. But my parents, Linda and Robert, insisted that learning financial responsibility was crucial for my development as an adult. Emma, who's 25 and had been living at home since dropping out of college 3 years earlier, apparently didn't need the same lesson in financial responsibility. When I questioned the obvious disparity, my mother explained that Emma was going through a difficult time and needed family support. Emma had been struggling to find her direction after leaving school, bouncing between part-time jobs and creative pursuits that never seemed to generate income. Meanwhile, I was working full-time at a nonprofit while pursuing my graduate degree, somehow managing to balance both commitments while grieving our grandmother's death. The $800 represented nearly half of my monthly income after taxes. Every month, I watched my savings account dwindle while my peers were building their financial futures. I suggested multiple times that the amount seemed excessive for a single bedroom in a family home, especially considering Emma's rent-free arrangement, but my parents consistently dismissed these conversations. They reminded me that I was fortunate to have a place to live at all, and that many young adults would be grateful for such family support during their educational pursuits. Emma's basement apartment was actually quite impressive. My parents had spent approximately $15,000 the previous year converting the space into a fully functional living area with its own entrance, kitchenette, and bathroom. She had privacy, independence, and significantly more square footage than my childhood bedroom upstairs. When I mentioned this during family dinners, the conversation would quickly shift to other topics, or my parents would emphasize how Emma was still finding herself and needed unconditional family support during this transitional period. The monthly rent collection became a ritual that highlighted the disparity in our treatment. Every first of the month, my father would knock on my bedroom door with an expectant expression, and I would hand over the carefully budgeted $800 in cash. Emma's financial contributions to the household were never discussed or acknowledged in any formal way. When I asked my parents directly about the arrangement, they assured me that everyone was contributing appropriately to the household according to their individual circumstances and capabilities. My grandmother's death had been particularly devastating for me because we had maintained a close relationship throughout my life. She had always been proud of my academic achievements and career aspirations, often telling family members about my progress in graduate school and my work with underprivileged families. After her passing, I threw myself into completing my thesis while managing the emotional weight of grief, somehow maintaining my demanding work schedule and family obligations. Emma seemed less affected by our grandmother's death, which my parents attributed to different grieving styles and coping mechanisms. She continued her irregular work schedule and social activities without any apparent disruption. During family discussions about our grandmother's legacy and the impact of her passing, Emma rarely contributed to the conversation, while I found myself carrying the emotional labor of processing our collective grief while managing my own studies and career responsibilities. The financial strain of paying $800 monthly began affecting every aspect of my life. I stopped eating out with friends, canceled my gym membership, and started buying generic groceries to stretch my budget. My social life suffered as I couldn't afford the same activities as my peers. Meanwhile, Emma seemed to have plenty of disposable income for her interests, frequently mentioning new purchases, social outings, and creative projects that required financial investment. When I calculated the total amount I had paid over 3 years, the number was staggering: $28,800. That money could have paid for my graduate school tuition, provided a substantial down payment on a home, or created a solid foundation for my financial future. Instead, it had disappeared into my parents' household budget, while Emma lived completely free of such financial obligations. The breaking point came last month when I was organizing important documents for my thesis research and stumbled upon something that completely shattered my understanding of our family's financial dynamics. I was looking for my birth certificate in my father's home office when I discovered a folder labeled Property Management that contained documents I never expected to see. Inside that folder were rental agreements and payment records showing that my parents owned 3 rental properties in addition to our family home. The monthly rental income from these properties totaled approximately $4,200. My parents, who had consistently emphasized their financial struggles and the necessity of my monthly contributions, were receiving substantial passive income that they had never mentioned during our conversations about household expenses and financial responsibility. But the discovery that truly devastated me was a spreadsheet tracking all household financial contributions over the past 3 years. The document showed that Emma had indeed been making payments, but not in the form of traditional rent. Instead, she had been providing what my parents classified as property maintenance services, valued at $600 monthly. These services included basic household tasks like lawn mowing, snow removal, and general cleaning that she performed occasionally and inconsistently. The spreadsheet revealed the systematic nature of the deception. My $800 in actual cash was listed as rental income, while Emma's sporadic household help was generously valued at $600 as property maintenance services. Even more painful was the notation section, where my father had written comments about each of our contributions. My consistent cash payments were described simply as rent received, while Emma's occasional help was praised as valuable family support and essential household assistance. This discovery forced me to re-examine every conversation about money and fairness that had occurred over the past 3 years. My parents had systematically gaslit me into believing that my financial contributions were necessary, while Emma's non-existent rent payments were justified by her occasional help around the house. They had hidden their substantial rental income while emphasizing their financial struggles and my obligation to contribute to household expenses. The emotional impact of uncovering this deception was profound. I realized that my parents had been manipulating the truth about our family's financial situation while exploiting my sense of responsibility and guilt. They had allowed me to struggle financially, watching me sacrifice my social life and future financial security, while knowing they had multiple sources of income that made my contributions unnecessary. I spent several days processing this information before deciding how to address the situation. The betrayal felt overwhelming, but I knew I needed to approach the confrontation strategically rather than emotionally. I made copies of all relevant documents and prepared a detailed breakdown of the financial discrepancies I had discovered. The conversation with my parents took place on a Sunday evening when Emma was visiting friends. I presented the evidence methodically, explaining how I had discovered their rental income and the spreadsheet documenting our different treatment. I asked them to explain why they had hidden their financial stability while insisting on my monthly payments and exempting Emma from similar obligations. My mother's initial response was defensive anger about my invasion of their privacy by looking through their personal documents. She accused me of being sneaky and untrustworthy, completely deflecting from the actual content of what I had discovered. My father remained silent during most of the conversation, occasionally nodding or offering brief confirmations of my mother's statements. When I pressed for specific explanations about the rental income and Emma's different treatment, my parents insisted that their financial decisions were complex and that I didn't understand the full picture of their expenses and obligations. They maintained that Emma's household contributions were valuable and that my situation was different because I was older and more established in my career. The gaslighting continued as they suggested that I was being ungrateful for the housing they had provided and that many young adults would be thrilled to have such family support during graduate school. They emphasized their sacrifices in allowing me to live at home and their generosity in providing me with a place to stay during my educational pursuits. But I had learned too much about manipulation tactics through my social work studies to be swayed by these familiar patterns of deflection and blame shifting. I calmly presented the mathematical reality. I had paid nearly $29,000 over 3 years while Emma had paid nothing, despite my parents having substantial income from rental properties that made my contributions financially unnecessary. The turning point in the conversation came when my father finally acknowledged that they had been treating us differently, but insisted that their approach was tailored to our individual needs and circumstances. He claimed that I was more capable of handling financial responsibility and that Emma needed more support during her transitional period. This admission confirmed that the differential treatment had been intentional and systematic. I informed my parents that I would be moving out within 30 days and that I expected them to return the excess money I had paid beyond what would constitute fair market value for a single bedroom in a shared family home. Based on comparable rentals in our area, a reasonable amount would have been approximately $300 monthly, meaning they owed me approximately $15,000 in overpayments. Their reaction to my financial request was immediate and explosive. They accused me of being mercenary and ungrateful, suggesting that I was trying to extort money from them after they had generously provided me with housing. They insisted that I had agreed to the rental amount and that changing the terms retroactively was unfair and manipulative. The irony of being accused of manipulation by people who had systematically deceived me about their financial situation was not lost on me. I remained calm during their emotional outburst, reiterating that I had discovered evidence of their deception and that I expected them to address the financial disparity they had created through their dishonesty. Over the following weeks, I secured an apartment and began the process of moving out. My parents oscillated between anger and attempts at emotional manipulation, sometimes suggesting that I was destroying our family relationships over money, other times insisting that their treatment had been fair and that I was overreacting to normal family dynamics. Emma's response to the situation was particularly revealing. When she learned about my discovery and planned departure, she seemed genuinely surprised that I had been paying $800 monthly. She claimed she had assumed I was paying a much smaller amount, perhaps $200 or $300, and that she hadn't realized the extent of the disparity in our treatment. However, her surprise seemed somewhat performative when I presented her with copies of the spreadsheet showing how her occasional household help had been valued at $600 monthly. She became defensive about her contributions, insisting that her help around the house was genuinely valuable and that she had been pulling her weight in ways that weren't purely financial. The conversation with Emma revealed another layer of the family dysfunction. She had been content to accept preferential treatment without questioning its fairness or impact on me. Even after learning about the extent of the disparity, she seemed more concerned about potential changes to her living situation than about the systematic way our parents had deceived me. My departure from the family home was swift and decisive. I had learned through my social work training that enabling dysfunctional patterns only perpetuates them, and I knew that continuing to accept unfair treatment would validate my parents' belief that their behavior was acceptable. Moving out was not just a practical decision, but a statement about my self-worth and my refusal to participate in manipulative family dynamics. The apartment I secured was modest, but represented genuine independence and financial transparency. My monthly housing costs were actually lower than what I had been paying my parents, and I no longer felt the emotional burden of subsidizing my family's lifestyle while being treated as less deserving than my sister. My parents made several attempts to convince me to return home, usually focusing on the emotional aspects of our relationships rather than addressing the financial deception I had uncovered. They suggested that I was prioritizing money over family bonds, and that my reaction was disproportionate to their mistakes in communication about household finances. But I had learned to recognize these manipulation tactics and remained firm in my boundaries. I informed them that rebuilding our relationship would require acknowledgement of their deception, an apology for the differential treatment, and concrete changes in how they approached family financial matters. Simply returning to the previous dynamic was not an option. The impact of establishing these boundaries extended beyond my immediate family relationships. I began recognizing similar patterns of manipulation and favoritism in other areas of my life, including some friendships and professional relationships. The experience taught me to trust my instincts when something feels unfair or manipulative, rather than doubting my perceptions when others gaslight me. My graduate studies in social work provided a framework for understanding the psychological dynamics of what I had experienced. I learned about parentification, scapegoating, and financial abuse within family systems. This academic knowledge helped me process the emotional impact of my parents' behavior while developing strategies for maintaining healthy boundaries. The completion of my master's thesis became particularly meaningful in light of my family situation. My research focused on financial manipulation within family systems and its impact on young adult development. The personal experience I had gained through my family situation provided authentic insights that strengthened my academic work and prepared me for professional practice with families experiencing similar dynamics. 6 months after moving out, I received recognition for my thesis research at a regional social work conference. The presentation addressed how financial manipulation affects family relationships and individual development, drawing on both academic research and lived experience. Several colleagues and professors commended the depth and authenticity of my analysis. This professional recognition provided external validation of my worth and capabilities that contrasted sharply with my family's treatment. While my parents had consistently minimized my achievements and potential, the broader professional community recognized the value of my work and insights. This disparity helped me understand that my family's assessment of my worth was skewed by their own dysfunction rather than reflecting my actual abilities or character. My parents learned about the conference recognition through mutual family friends, and their reaction was complicated. They expressed pride in my achievements while simultaneously maintaining that their previous treatment had been appropriate and justified. This cognitive dissonance revealed the depth of their denial about the impact of their favoritism and deception. The financial recovery from paying excessive rent for 3 years required careful budgeting and planning. I created a detailed savings plan to rebuild my financial foundation and began investing in my professional development through additional training and certification programs. The money I had previously paid to my parents could now support my actual goals and future security. Emma's living situation remained unchanged for several months after my departure, but eventually our parents began expecting her to contribute more substantially to household expenses. When she complained about these new expectations, I felt no sympathy for her adjustment to more equitable treatment. She had benefited from preferential treatment at my expense for years, and experiencing financial responsibility for the first time was a necessary part of her development. The holidays provided the first major test of my boundary-setting efforts. My parents expected me to return home for traditional family celebrations, but I had committed to spending holidays with friends who had become my chosen family. This decision prompted emotional manipulation attempts, including suggestions that I was ruining family traditions and being selfish about my hurt feelings. I maintained my boundaries during the holiday season, choosing to celebrate with people who treated me with consistent respect and appreciation. This decision reinforced my commitment to prioritizing relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. The holidays were actually more enjoyable and peaceful without the underlying tension of family dysfunction. My professional work with families experiencing similar dynamics became deeply fulfilling as I could offer both academic knowledge and personal understanding of financial manipulation and favoritism. Clients often commented on my authentic empathy and practical insights about navigating family boundary setting. My lived experience enhanced my ability to help others recognize and address similar patterns in their own families. The personal growth that resulted from confronting my family's dysfunction extended into all areas of my life. I became more assertive in professional settings, more selective about friendships, and more confident in trusting my instincts about people's motivations and character. The experience taught me that self-advocacy is essential for maintaining mental health and personal integrity. A year after moving out, my parents made their first genuine attempt at acknowledging their mistakes. They admitted that they had treated Emma and me differently and that their financial deception had been wrong. However, they still maintained that their intentions had been good and that they had been trying to help both of us in ways they thought were appropriate. This partial acknowledgement represented progress, but it fell short of the full accountability I needed for rebuilding trust. They continued to minimize the impact of their behavior and avoided discussing concrete changes in their approach to family relationships. Their apology felt more like damage control than genuine remorse and commitment to change. I established specific conditions for rebuilding our relationship, including family therapy to address the underlying dysfunction and a commitment to treating all family members with equal respect and transparency. I also requested reimbursement for the excess rent I had paid, not because I needed the money, but because it represented acknowledgement of the concrete harm their deception had caused. My parents initially resisted these conditions, suggesting that I was being unreasonable and punitive in my expectations. They wanted to move forward without addressing the systemic issues that had created the problems in our relationship. This resistance confirmed that they had not yet fully grasped the depth of change required for genuine healing. The process of rebuilding family relationships while maintaining healthy boundaries requires ongoing vigilance and commitment to personal growth. I learned that forgiveness does not require accepting continued mistreatment or returning to dysfunctional patterns. True reconciliation requires accountability, changed behavior, and mutual respect. Emma eventually reached out to apologize for her role in the family dysfunction, acknowledging that she had been aware of the differential treatment but had been comfortable accepting the benefits without questioning the fairness. Her apology felt more genuine than our parents because she took responsibility for her choices rather than minimizing the impact of the situation. The relationship with Emma gradually improved as she demonstrated changed behavior and genuine commitment to more equitable family dynamics. She began contributing fairly to household expenses and stopped accepting preferential treatment from our parents. This behavioral change showed that she had learned from the situation and was committed to healthier family relationships. The professional success I achieved in the field of social work provided ongoing validation that my worth was not determined by my family's treatment. I received promotions, positive evaluations, and recognition from colleagues and clients who valued my skills and contributions. This external feedback helped counteract years of being minimized and undervalued within my family system. 2 years after the initial confrontation, my family relationships had stabilized into a new pattern based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. My parents had reluctantly agreed to family therapy, which provided a structured environment for addressing their favoritism patterns and learning healthier communication skills. The therapy process was sometimes difficult, but it created accountability for changed behavior. The therapist helped my parents understand how their differential treatment had affected my development and our family relationships. Having a neutral professional validate my experiences and concerns made it harder for my parents to dismiss or minimize the impact of their behavior. The therapy sessions provided education about healthy family dynamics and financial boundaries. My story has resonated with many people who have experienced similar family favoritism and financial manipulation. I began sharing my experience through support groups and professional presentations, helping others recognize and address comparable situations in their own families. This advocacy work has become an important part of my healing process and professional mission. The financial independence I achieved after leaving my family home has been profoundly empowering. I learned to trust my ability to manage my own finances and make decisions based on my values, rather than family pressure or guilt. This independence has strengthened my confidence in all areas of life and reinforced my commitment to maintaining healthy boundaries. Today, I maintain limited but respectful contact with my parents, contingent on their continued respect for my boundaries and their demonstrated commitment to changed behavior. Our relationship will never return to the naive trust of my childhood, but it has evolved into something more honest and sustainable. I no longer need their approval or validation to feel worthy of respect and fair treatment. Emma and I have developed a stronger relationship built on mutual respect and honest communication. She learned important lessons about privilege and fairness through witnessing the consequences of our family's dysfunction. Our shared experience of family therapy and boundary setting has actually brought us closer together as adults. For anyone experiencing similar family favoritism or financial manipulation, I want you to know that your perceptions are valid and your worth is not determined by unfair treatment from family members. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, document evidence of differential treatment, and don't be afraid to establish boundaries that protect your mental health and financial security. The journey from family dysfunction to healthy relationships requires courage, persistence, and often professional support. But the freedom and self-respect that come from refusing to accept mistreatment are worth every difficult conversation and boundary you have to establish. You deserve to be treated with fairness and respect, regardless of family dynamics or manipulation attempts. If this story resonates with your experience, please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you experienced financial favoritism or manipulation within your family? How did you address the situation, and what strategies helped you maintain your boundaries? Your experiences could help others who are navigating similar challenges. Remember to like this video if it provided insights or validation for your own experiences, and subscribe for more content about family relationships, boundary setting, and personal growth. Together, we can support each other in creating healthier relationships and breaking cycles of dysfunction that affect too many families.